Seed and Spark, off of Seed and Spark, is also a magazine called Bright Ideas. As with Seed and Spark, you can find them on Film Curious every other Tuesday
on Twitter. Yeah, so we do a Twitter chat every other week on the hashtag Film Curious. And we invite, basically, we're like constantly listening to the community, and when they have sort of a nexus of questions around a certain idea, we will bring on the experts we think can really help them. So we just had a hugely popular one on marketing and social media with Kristen McCracken, who's a Webby Award winner, and the women who tweet behind one of the most delightful handles on the internet, King is a Fink. And they're web series creators. They're wonderful. We're doing them on technology. We do them on distribution. And we're just trying to connect the filmmakers with the experts who want to help them. So Film Curious is just one of the ways that we try to, be in touch with education and what people need.
Yeah, and I'm practically on that every other Tuesday.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. I'm one of the people that's like, Mike, you seem very film curious. Here you go, do this. So I'm on that. So
that's the first thing I thought when I met you. Mike, you seem very film curious.
Well, I happen to be. So thank you for helping us with your own intro.
Oh,
so Emily Best,
pleasure.
everybody. Woo! So Emily, when you got here, we were talking about the VW debacle. Let's talk about that.
I don't know what it is. Explain it to me.
Okay, so here's the deal. VW, for the last, I think since 2004, it seems, in their diesel vehicles, has been putting sort of a trickery program in the computer system that can tell when it's being emissions tested. And it lowers the emissions of the vehicle, but that, of course, increases or decreases the gas mileage and just makes the performance less efficient.
I see, okay.
And then when it's driving out on the road, it doesn't care about emissions and gets better performance. And, what is happening in the world when one of the biggest brands, how many people had to sign off and be complicit in this, who thought, the hubris that they thought they wouldn't get caught.
Yeah.
And then, it gets discovered. The EPA has been, probing at this, apparently, for a little while. And then it finally, the truth came out. And VW is like, ooh, sorry. And then the EPA is like, well, what about these 2016 vehicles? And they were like, yeah, about the 20s, it's in there too. They literally just thought they could do this. And now apparently there's all these VWs hanging out in ports all over the US because they're you can't distribute them.
That's crazy.
And this is the hubris part.
Okay.
They had not prepared a fix for this. So they can recall the vehicles. They don't know what they're going to do to them.
Don't you think you would create a backup plan in case this was discovered?
No.
I mean,
So as a VW owner, I will tell you that I don't drive a diesel one, so I feel like I'm kind of clean there. But people will give me dirty looks now. And it's
so unfair.
I thought it was just because I'm singing in my car or something, but no, it's just because I drive a VW.
Might be, it could be, I don't know. Anyway, that's been on my mind lately because I'm, we're really engaged in growing our own brand. We're helping filmmakers grow their own brands, and I'm obsessed with the notion of social capital because we have this thing called social media. And actually what it's good for is growing, exchanging, spending, and gathering social capital, right? And social capital is a term that is actually almost 100 years old. And it was coined to refer to the sort of measurement of total trust and reputation inside a group or that a person has.
Yeah.
Right? And any brand is actually really only as good as its social capital ultimately, particularly in the day and age where anybody who's mad about anything can be super public about it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so, a measure of the social capital I think we've gathered is before we launched the brand new website, during there was a campaign that we had called Money and Violence that was so popular. There was one really bad day. It crashed our website 100 times. That's how popular it was, which is kind of a good problem to have, but not because there were other campaigns crowdfunding on the site who were like, hey, jerks. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, you can say whatever
you
want.
Hey, assholes.
There you go.
Your website keeps crashing. And to me, the measure of social capital was that they contacted us and gave us a chance to make it right, as opposed to like putting us on blast publicly, right? And that's because like they cared enough about us somehow to like not try to wreck us publicly. They were giving us a chance to remedy it. And I would contend that like if we hadn't done it satisfactorily, we would have deserved whatever they wanted to say about us publicly, right?
So, well, something that's super apparent about Seed and Spark, and it's because Turtle Dove Films raised their entire company on Seed and Spark. Is that y'all care? Like it sounds so simple, but y'all actually care.
Well, we're filmmakers.
Yeah.
So
so that kind of goes to it. How did you get into all this? How did you start? Where you? Let's talk about you. Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school in Sacramento, California.
Cool.
I went to public school. I studied anthropology starting in high school, and then I continued that in college. And I ended up writing my thesis. So I got really interested in body modification.
Oh, wow.
Not my own necessarily. I do have a lot of tattoos now, but like I got really interested in just like why people were doing it, and what that was about. And what happened was, my dad moved to New York City when I was like 15, and for my high school, I had to write sort of a version of a thesis. I was in this really brutally rigorous program that sort of was one of the best preparations. I got to college and I was like, this part's easy. And all of my friends were like, it's terrible. I'm like, you have no idea. So I, in the process of like researching for this paper, my dad had moved into a place in Soho back before Soho was, Broadway, that stretch of Broadway used to be like a bodega, Canal Jeans, which I'm still upset isn't there anymore, and like warehouses, right? Yeah. Still warehouses, and there was the Chase Bank that's there, still there. That's what I remember. And right next door to my dad's place, this like garage door had opened up and a tattoo parlor had gone in. And what I would discover is that tattoo had been illegal in New York City since 1965 until 1997.
Did not know that one.
Because it was linked to a hepatitis outbreak. Okay. And so they banned it, possibly falsely linked, maybe not. Like the Bowery tattoo shops weren't necessarily super clean back then, but I'm sure you'll have some angry listener about that. I'm just kidding. So it was legal. So I got really interested in like, as people were coming back and getting tattooed, what were they getting? I was just really interested in the why, right? Yeah. And then that interest continued through college. So when I was writing my thesis in college, I found this website, and this is early internet, okay? So like I started looking at this at 2000, 2001, like GeoCities sites, basically. I
forgot.
Yeah. Welcome back to my era here. So one of the very first social networks was built by a website called BME Zine, which I believe still exists. It's bodymodificationezine.com. And BME Zine had this other sort of property called IAM. And then you would get a profile. It would be like IAM / whatever your profile name was. Yeah. And then you could post in these like hilarious, like, sort of long form. It would be like an image and a bunch of text and the more images. It's just like a single blog, right? And the more you added, like the longer your page got. It was real rudimentary, but it was a social network. Yeah. And I became fascinated by, so there's the piece of artwork. Yeah. There's the canvas, which is also a human. And who gets attributed the artistry is like sort of the canvas and sort of the artist. But then you add the layer of the internet onto it and the way that we communicate with our skin anyway. That there was this like these sort of meta layers in there. And I was just fascinated, and I got really interested in internet communities and what this would mean. And I didn't realize this until a year and a half after I started Seed and Spark. I was at home, I was cleaning out this closet. I found my thesis, which was printed out. It's like this, 120-page ugly document. And I read the conclusion because, frankly, the rest of it was really boring. And it was about how social networks would turn communities of interest into communities of practice. And we didn't know where this would go. Okay. And I was like, why did I not know that I could have started Facebook if only I had, damn it, No, so I was apparently interested in the way the internet would organize communities that were streamlined around value systems, right? So how do you create efficiency? Well, one way is if everyone shares sort of the same value set, then there's a bunch of things that are already assumed and shared.
Yeah.
And that makes it a lot easier to like know that certain decisions are going to be made in a certain way. So the reason that social capital is really interesting is it's sort of, it's trust and reputation, but it's sort of like a shared value set, right? That you can gather over time. And so that's like, if I have to go back, I realize now that's where my interest in this would come from, because I think the real power of the internet is to allow us to find the people with whom our values are aligned, but we used to only be able to do it with proximity. Now we can do it worldwide, right? And that's the really, I'm not saying anything like people don't know. I just think it's really like, that's what's always been compelling to me about it.
Well, that's so it's funny because like in my real job, I'm a social strategist. So that's what I do for a living.
Awesome.
And yeah, that's honestly for me, I know I have to quit the moment that this stops blowing my mind, but I can control somebody's action, or I can manipulate somebody's thought with 140 characters. That throws me a loop every time I think of that idea. Is I can make somebody decide on something or decide against something based on 140 characters.
Sure.
That's so crazy.
And I would say that like maybe another way to frame it is like you can encourage an action or invite an action, because I actually think what social media has done is it has made us incredible filters for two things: importance and authenticity. So you scroll, because we're really good at scrolling through a feed really quickly. And essentially we're going through our Facebook feed going, matters doesn't matter, matters doesn't matter, matters doesn't matter, matters doesn't matter. Additionally, we're going bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. That's interesting. That seems real. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. So like you can tell when somebody posts something that's disingenuous. You can tell, and you can't say necessarily why. You can just know. Right? And I think it's because we've actually been sort of trained this way, through like, of course, most people can do it through body language because this is like, that's our human capacity. But now we're being able to do it through 140 characters, through a set of hashtags, right? Like I feel a very different way about a tweet that ends, hashtag stay indie versus a tweet that ends hashtag so blessed, right? That immediately communicates a huge set of like differing information to me that like helps me decide whether or not I'm going to choose, right? Like yes or no. So I think what's cool about that is for artists who are interested in connecting with the people who want to get down with their authenticity, social media has kind of made it so that's the only way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Like you will only be rewarded the more like authentic you are. Now that doesn't mean authentic in your full self, right? It means authentic for the audience, the career that you're trying to have and the audience you're trying to gather, for the tone of filmmaker, the brand of filmmaker you want to be. That's the authenticity. It doesn't mean, and this is really important, that you have to reveal a lot about your personal life. Authenticity and personal life actually have nothing to do with each other. Because the authenticity of your artistic voice may in fact be really different from your personal life.
So that's something that hits us quite a bit. And we've had 4 or 5 interviews now. And one of the things that comes up all the time is trying to find your voice. And the whole thing is it's failing and failing and failing and failing and failing until you hit it.
Right.
And it's like, oh wait, I failed 10,000 times and this one time, did I find it? Holy crap. And that's what it is.
Well, the beautiful thing about social media is all the platforms are simply storytelling platforms with different demands. So Twitter is storytelling in 140 characters, and Facebook is storytelling and actually benefits most by like video plus text. YouTube is short form video storytelling. Pinterest is single image tile storytelling. Instagram is, beautiful or compelling image plus text storytelling. And you can, based on what is interesting to you, choose to develop your voice, leveraging these platforms as like training mechanisms. Like this is, well, because we're storytellers, right? We're filmmakers, we're storytellers. These are all storytelling platforms. So I can decide I want to get really good at quippiness, right? Twitter. I'm going to Twitter, right? I want like my one-liners to sing. So I'm going to go to Twitter and just see like how many retweets I can get for how fun. And comedians love Twitter for this. Yeah. Patton Oswalt is a flippin' genius on Twitter. These things. My best friend is an actress, and she's on a TV show called Masters of Sex. And I think the producers there often want her. They like ask them to live tweet and stuff. Yeah. She finds Twitter like a really frustrating platform. But on Instagram, because she's really irreverent, but she's an image maker, right? Yeah. So she finds like one image and a funny subtitle is what works for her. And it has been hugely successful for her because it's right in her wheelhouse of how she likes to tell stories, right? Yeah. And so I think you have to find the place that works for you and the medium that works for you. And you also have to understand enough about your audience to know where you might need to get good at stuff. Like if you're writing comedy, you should probably think about getting on Twitter because so many comedians have cultivated audiences on Twitter that's where a lot of comedy audiences are hanging out.
Do you feel though that like some of the stuff is oversaturated? And I know that's kind of just a insecure kind of barrier thing that people throw out. But do you
insofar as there are 1.7 billion people on Facebook, sure, and ignore them at your own peril. Do you know what I mean? Like there is no other way now. Yeah. Right? And frankly, you want to go where the people are, not where the people are not.
True.
Right? Yeah. So for me, social media is about leveraging about it what is useful. So the cool thing about Twitter is it's a place you can reach out to people you don't know. But the thing is, the way you reach out to them really matters. And generally it rewards altruism. It rewards saying nice things about people, promoting their work, tagging them and stuff, making sure that, you're sharing an article that they wrote or something like that. Yeah. And you can actually cultivate, I have incredible relationships. I met the Finks, the King is a Fink folks through Twitter, and I hope to work with them for the rest of they're just geniuses. I've made a lot of professional relationships with people I would consider really important through Twitter. Facebook is one that relies a lot more on interpersonal relationships, and it's a way of deepening relationships that you might not otherwise be able to maintain at a distance. And then it's also about being able to leverage the 1.7 billion people to drive traffic to, your new movie or something like that. Yeah.
So how did all this come? So you started out of college going into... going into social, and like you were the Mark Zuckerberg before Mark Zuckerberg kind of thing.
I was not even close because I didn't think of it.
It happened here on the podcast that you were.
You said it. I'm playing
words.
For a moment.
How did you go from that to then you were producing, right? You produced and then
where did film or your art come into this? Like
I was just about to say something that I don't think I should say publicly, which is
that's fine.
Which is that
are you saying it?
I'm going to say it.
Okay.
I never cared about movies as a career.
Okay.
I was never like, I'm going to be in the pictures. Yeah. I have always been interested in people's ability to tell their story.
Okay.
That's what anthropology was really interesting to me in a certain way. So I got into theater in the late aughts in New York City and did the whole thing that you do when you go there. It's like, you get into some plays and then you start your own theater company, which was very difficult to enterprise. And then that sort of goes and then you start another one. And in the course of that, you probably produce some work you're really proud of. So that was sort of my track. And in 2011, I co-produced a site-specific run of Hedda Gabler, which is sort of a famous Nordic, now retroactively feminist play. And we set it in a mansion in Lower Manhattan, and decided that we were going to do it for free for an audience of 28 to 32 per night. And we wouldn't disclose the location until 24 hours in advance. And so, because New Yorkers hate to be told no, we sold out and had a 1,000-person waiting list before we started. It was really exciting. Yeah. It was a super exciting thing to do. During that production, I met Caitlin Fitzgerald, Caroline Von Kuhn, Susan Main, Emily Alexander Wilmoth, and Salome Krell, who were all, Caitlin was in the show, Susan was a vocal coach, Caroline was the assistant director, Salome was the company manager, Emily was a stage manager, and I was in the play and I was co-producing. And all of a sudden I was among the creative community I had always searched for. And we were women in our like late 20s, early 30s, all of us. And Caitlin at the time was auditioning for all these big indie movies. So she had already done It's Complicated with Nancy Meyers. Yeah. She was like on her way up. And so she would come like to the house every day before the show or during rehearsal with sides for the auditions she was going on the next day from like some big indie movie. And Caitlin looks like Audrey Hepburn if she were 6 feet tall, like a blonde Audrey Hepburn. She's one of the most beautiful women you'll ever see in your life. And that's the least interesting thing about her. She's so smart, so well-read, so funny, so dirty. Like just, just like one of the great humans on the planet. Yeah. And the parts that she was being offered were like, crappy young ingenue, didn't fit with her at all. And it was frustrating for her, partially because like those are hard parts to get when she comes in and she's all these other things. And they're like, no, we kind of just need you to be dumb and beautiful, And she's like, well, sorry, that's not what I am. Like, that's not a cool thing to be told. And I got really interested in independent film sort of in that moment. Like, obviously as a viewer, I had been watching them, but like, if that's what was being offered for women parts in independent movies, what did that say kind of about media as a whole? Yeah. If those are the alternative stories being told, where the fuck are we, right? Yeah. And I was having this experience, I sort of consider it my feminist awakening. Like, I don't know that I was even talking about feminism until I had this experience with these women, and Caitlin was sort of getting, and then all of a sudden the whole thing sort of clicked in my mind, and I was like, oh no, we gotta do something. But of course, because we were a group of theater artists, we're like, you know what we'll do? We'll take action. We're going to adapt a French New Wave film to the stage.
Yes. Huzzah!
In something that, like, let's be honest, like, our parents and a few old people would have come to see, and, like, nobody else. Yeah. So at that time, Caitlin was tapped by Ed Burns to make a movie called Newlyweds. And Ed Burns was really one of the first kind of big indie filmmakers to sort of take up the digital revolution. And he was shooting on a 5D with a sound guy. And that's it.
That's the crew. Right
there was no other crew.
That's awesome.
It was insane. And it was run and gun. There was no scripty. If you watch the movie, there's like all sorts of, the glass is in the other hand this time. Like, they didn't care. The point was that like it was just a delightful film, and it was all focused on story. And he was really like kind of leading that charge. So Caitlin was like, well, why don't you come to set one day? And I was like, do you mean set with Ed Burns? She's like, yeah, come meet Eddie. I'm like, Eddie, okay. So I go and I knock on this apartment door, and the door opens, and this like devastatingly handsome 6'3" man is like, hey, I'm Eddie, come on in. And I'm like, hi, I'm a puddle on the floor. But then I got to hang out and basically watch what it would look like to make a movie with no crew.
Yeah.
Now, I was very naive. And it did not occur to me that this is what it looks like making a movie with no crew with guys you've been making movies with for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? And I also didn't know enough to know that like a run and gun mockumentary that you're shooting in your friend's apartments would be different than the script that I was handed to then produce, because of course, like, I was the producer in the group. Yeah. And turns out producing theater, producing film, not the same. Was slow contemplative drama set in Maine in the summer that was mostly outdoor landscapes. So actually the 5D was not even available to us as a camera because it couldn't do what we needed it to do. I don't know if you know this, but like put a long lens on a 5D and then it starts to bow if you're looking at big landscapes.
Did not know that.
Yeah, in video. This is what I would learn when I met a cinematographer named Eve Cohen on a set that I was acting on, and brought her into the project really early because we were like, we're going to do like a run and gun on the 5D. Here's the script. And she was like, you have no idea what you're doing. Let me help you. Yeah. And so I learned to make film producing Like the Water, which is what the film would eventually be called. Yeah. And the process of raising money for that film, growing an audience for that film, all of which happened out of necessity, not out of like some incredible foresight of mine. It was just that the way things happened, we were like, hey, I think that's a replicable model. Yeah. And that's what gave rise to Seed and Spark. But what it really was at every stage we were told by financiers, by sales agents, by distributors, there's not much of an audience for this movie about female friendships that didn't involve women's only solution to their problem being a man. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, well, as we got deeper in the beginning, I was like, look, my instincts are telling me you're wrong. And that's because I know I'm the audience for this movie and I know I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as it got further along, like when we started shooting and there were all these women saying, oh, I read the script and it just meant so much to me. And then we went to festivals, we premiered, and the head of this organization called Hardy Girls, Healthy Women, who also happened to be the mayor of Waterville, Maine, where the Maine International Film Festival takes place, which is where we premiered, raised her hand. She was the first one in our Q&A. And there were 9 women who had worked in all the major roles on this film standing up on the stage togetger. And she raised her hand and she said, I just want to say thank you. This makes me really emotional.
No.
I feel like I've been waiting for this movie my whole life. And like, that was sort of all we needed. Like, if that had been the last thing to happen, that would have been fine. Yeah. But the next thing that happened was I started to talk to, you guys are so cute actors. Everybody's eyes are misty right now. I started to talk to sales agents and they would say things to me like, well, do you think you could put a little more lesbian erotica in it in a film where there's no lesbian erotica? Because then I really think we could sell it. Yeah. And I was like, what? Okay, so here's what I learned. The middlemen know how to do a thing one way. Mm-hmm. That one way does not necessarily reflect the way the zeitgeist has changed, demographics has changed, social media has changed. And they are now standing in the way of what audiences actually want. Yeah. And the inefficiencies in the system are just so myriad, it's sometimes overwhelming, right? You could sell a film at Sundance if you're one of the 0.01% to get in, and then one of the 10 that actually sell at the festival, to a big distributor and never see another dime off that movie, no matter how well it does, because of all the people in between when the audience spends their money and when the filmmaker gets it.
That's crazy.
And one of the things that I don't actually know if this is a big deal to say or not, but I feel like Hollywood has been to technology what the NFL has been to brain injuries, which is that they have actively invested in setting back the research. Like, so the NFL actively invested in setting back the research 15 years because it benefited their bottom line. Yeah. Hollywood has spent a ton of money pretending like everything is fine. It's fine. It's all working the same the way it's always worked and everything is fine. It doesn't matter that DVDs don't really produce any revenue anymore. We're still going to keep our giant overheads and we're just going to spend more money and make sure that every movie makes $1 billion. Otherwise we can't survive. And that's the proliferation of the giant blockbuster, previous property, because it's the only way that they can use their old ass mathematical models to prove anything that's reliable to them. Right? Yeah. It is as far away from the art of filmmaking as humanly possible. And I would even argue that right now the Oscar films have become a style of filmmaking that is so annoying. And so, like, the actual cultural importance of film is utterly now left in the hands of independent filmmakers. And I would argue there's never a better time to be making stuff that matters to individual people because they're desperate for it.
So you deal with a lot of independent filmmakers. And one thing that, like, we're struggling with a lot is, so we're both trying to make our own films and stuff like that. It's following that formula, the quote-unquote formula. And it's like, we have a story and we know we need to tell the story a certain way, but it doesn't fit this or it doesn't fit that. And I know it's a lot with like narrative and a lot of save the cat this, save the cat that, but I know you're talking more about just the idea of independent film, right?
Well, so, okay. The traditional model still favors really formulaic things. Yeah. Right? Like we said, so the Oscar bait movies follow a certain formula. Yeah. Right? There's a certain like discovery, self-discovery and triumph at the end. And that like creates an Oscar-winning film for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. Very occasionally do you get a tour de force, like 12 Years a Slave. But for the most part, it's sort of, and even that one like didn't get all the awards it necessarily deserved that year because other more feel-good movies, right? So you have people making movies for Oscar voters, right? Yeah. And they're doing it very successfully. Yeah. Because you watch a movie and you're like, Oscar bait movie, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you know your audience, you can make stuff for them. But I would argue it's gone the wrong direction, which is that they're actually pandering to an audience that they know likes a certain formula, as opposed to sort of maintaining the artistic integrity in a certain way. Yeah. And what I think is crazy about crowdfunding is that formulaic movies don't do very well. So there have been campaigns with, a rom-com with Katherine Heigl or a rom-com with Melissa Joan Hart, and those fail. And in fact, like James Franco's campaign didn't even do that well. Yeah. And what I think is interesting about that is that sort of the world saying, like, we don't need any more James Franco movies. No, I'm serious. Like, I'm not being a jerk here. It's like, we don't, there are so many, we might not need any more of those.
See, it's so scary.
But, no, that's okay. But there's a very interesting sort of dark romantic pseudo-comedy called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night that is a native black and white Farsi language vampire skateboard western.
What?
That came out of, it played at Sundance year before last. Anna Lily Amirpour.
Girl Walks Home at Night?
A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
We'll put a link to that.
She kicked the door down in independent film and said, I have a voice and I will not be swayed. And an audience got behind her and was like, yeah, I will watch that, right? And that's what's exciting to me about when you actually invest in connecting to your audience, you are rewarded more, the sort of more edgy, different, exciting you are, as opposed to the more formulaic you are. Mm-hmm. Because like, you're not going to do a rom-com better than Sony Pictures Classic, right? Yeah, so then why is your rom-com for me? And it might be because you're a person who, if you were going to look at who gets to play romantic leads.
Yeah, that's
right.
So just so you know, for me, my entire end goal is to be the romantic lead in a romantic comedy. And for the audience who's listening, you know me, I'm a 285-pound, 5'10" kind of chubby dude that's a little bit more of a character actor. And I don't want to get caught in that. I want to get caught in, I don't know.
Well, and what romantic comedies have been telling you your whole life is actually that you're not worthy of love.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what you are providing,
you're worthy of love. You are worthy of love.
This is what I'm saying.
Throw it on. Go ahead. Get some of that, Brad.
The reason that it's important that you make romantic comedies is because you have something to say about like who the romantic life is for. And I've listened to actors with disabilities say this too. They're like, do people think we don't have sex? Because guess what? We do.
Yeah.
And it's probably kinkier than what you've ever imagined. And you're like, yes, I would watch that movie because like I want to know that story and I want that person to feel like their sexuality is as valid as my sexuality.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And their romance is as valid as my romance. And their heartbreak is as valid as my heartbreak. And that it's not voyeuristic, it's authentic, right? Yeah. And this is where
Full circle.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is where I think the reason that crowdfunding has been so exciting is that when audiences will get invested early on is when they connect deeply with the why. Why are you making this? Mm-hmm. And frankly, I think all of us could stand that reckoning sometimes.
Yeah.
Why am I making this? Am I making this to serve my ego? Or am I making this because there's a story that I really think isn't being told? Am I making this because I want to affect a change in the world? Am I making this to make money? Totally legitimate reason to make something, but has a different set of requirements. Of course. Am I making this to like get an agent? In which case, that's a very particular audience to make things for, right? And has a certain set of requirements. So what's interesting to me is, look, there's a lot more people like you out there than there are agents, for example.
Yeah.
So if you want to access an audience, I would say go after the larger one that you feel you can affect a change with, right? And now you're speaking to your own authentic motivations and to their authentic need.
Yeah.
Which is for something that looks like them, right?
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know, 60% of the population or something is like, I would say actually more like 99% of the population doesn't look like the magazines and the romantic stars, right?
Yes.
Unless you live in Los Angeles, in which case it's really skewed and that can really mess you up.
So we were just looking at everybody on the Seed and Spark who works here.
I know.
Brad's comment was like, everyone is beautiful.
Everyone's handsome. Everyone's beautiful.
Try going to my office every day. I look around and I'm like, are you serious, all of you? It is absurd. And the 4 recent hires are like, it's comical. I know. I apologize, but it's Los Angeles. Everybody just looks like that. I don't know what to do. They're all also the smartest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
But man, every time I get this new hire and like I'll see their. Actually, to be honest, I've almost never had to hire out because except for technology team.
Yeah.
I've had the incredible good fortune of just remarkable people like James Kalin and Blessing Yen and Mara Tasker who write to me and say, this is what I would like to do for Seed and Spark. Max Silverman did that as well. And I was like, yes.
Sure, yeah.
You want to, great. Yeah, we need that. You're right, you know? So I've had a good fortune, but it did happen to accrue a just ridiculously good-looking group of people.
I know, jeez.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware.
Brad and I get that all the time, obviously.
Ridiculously good-looking.
Ridiculously good-looking people.
I have worried that somebody would call me. You're the first person to call me out on that, and I was like, it's not intentional. But how could I defend myself?
No, we're not. I mean, we're not calling. No,
okay.
Yeah, I was like, we're not calling
it's
you out on
that.
Something
we noticed.
We noticed. No, it's fair. It's fair. They're a good-looking bunch.
You come to Austin, you get people, just looking ratty, and they're like, no, I'm a CEO of something. You're like, what's happening here?
I guess that's so. The interesting thing about Los Angeles, at least on the east side, is your founders look a little bit less like the sort of Silicon Valley flip-flops and sweatshirts type, because we still live in Los Angeles, which is, other than New York, and I can't speak for a lot of cities, New York and maybe Vancouver. I've been to a lot of cities recently. Like, it's a city that really encourages you to develop your own personal style.
Los Angeles or New York?
Los Angeles.
Okay.
New York does also. Vancouver definitely does.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in Sacramento, where it was encouraged to go like out in public in a sweatshirt and pajama pants, right? Different aesthetic, right? But LA definitely has a sort of like,
you have to look the best, right? Or almost, or
it's sort of like you do you, like exaggerated in a certain way.
I get it.
I actually really enjoy that about Los Angeles, because you go out and the people watching is incredible. Just incredible.
You're good.
Yeah. No, that's so we're here for Austin Film Fest, and that's why you're in town. And there's so many people from LA here, and I hate to say it, but you can
spot us. I know.
I'm kind of jealous. I kind of am. I know. I went out yesterday. I went out in shorts and like this like shitty t-shirt that I've had for so long, and I was sitting in a panel, and there's people sitting next to me. Their entire outfit was like $10,000. I was like, oh shit. What's happening here?
$35 at
I know,
Target.
This was all $35 at Target. Thank you.
I mean,
I don't think it matters.
I feel like that stuff can really get in the way.
Yeah.
Because, if what you're trying to do is make a living as a filmmaker, you got to keep your costs down. Yeah. And so if you're sort of doing the Keeping Up with the Joneses, or God forbid the Kardashians, you can end up, spending where you might not like to. Like, I do have a lot of clothes, which I've been collecting for a long time because I love clothes and I think they're really fun. And since I've gotten to LA, I've had like occasions to wear really weird and wacky stuff. Yeah. And the problem is like that, then you're like, well, I might need this for the next weird and wacky thing that I go to. And so, so it becomes a sort of like unnecessary expense that pops up that like I need to get better at controlling. Yeah. But like I saw a green silk jumpsuit and I was like, I probably need that. Now I wear it all the time. I wear it. I get a lot of use out of this.
There you go. So what we're saying is that we were just noticing.
I know they're good looking. Yeah, it's true. I'm going to tell them though.
Good.
They'll be very flattered.
GSS podcast.
Thank you.
Seed and Spark, ridiculously good looking. So wait, you're on a 150 city tour, right?
Gosh, that's a lot of cities.
Is that right?
I think so. I believe that's what the website said.
No. So we've taken the Stay Indie tour to I think 70 cities now.
Okay.
What happened was we started teaching this workshop called Crowdfunding to Build Independence, which is, it has a sort of two basic assumptions. Yeah. Number one is that the attendees want to build an independent, sustainable career in filmmaking or some sort of film adjacent thing, and that crowdfunding is really hard. So if you're going to do it, let's not let it be just for a little bit of money for one film, but let's let it be part of how you build that independent, sustainable career by understanding how to build a lasting, sustainable, direct connection to your audience that you can grow long after. So crowdfunding is not the 30 days that you're asking for money. Crowdfunding is a style of engagement that is lifelong for a career. And we really wanted to put that into context. So yes, the workshop is like how to set up a kick-ass crowdfunding campaign and so much more, right? How to set up a kick-ass crowdfunding campaign that is inside this style of engagement. And so we developed the workshop taught it a few times. The filmmakers who took it and then crowdfunded with us did really well, and that taught us a bunch more. We sort of revised the class, and then I got asked to come to, I don't know, 3 or 4. I got asked to come to Austin, Savannah, and I have to do it on the map in my brain, and Columbia, Missouri for Citizen Jane Film Festival. And I was like, oh, so Austin's in the middle, and Savannah's all the way on the edge, and Columbia's kind of back in the middle, but north. Oh, and and the first one in that set was something in Phoenix. And I was like, I wonder if it would be crazy if I got in my car and we tried to contact the film organizations in every city in between and just see how many crowdfunding to build independence workshops we could schedule. Because the way that we would get really good feedback on if this was effective, get filmmakers to know about us, develop relationships with these film organizations in all these cities is if we just tried.
Yeah.
So we organized 21 cities in 35 days. And just during that process, we got invited to a bunch more places. So I ended up teaching in and around New York a bunch, and then several times in Michigan, in Vancouver, Seattle, and Bellevue, and then coming back to LA and going on the road. So in 65 days, we did 35 cities. Erica and I were in separate cities for some of that, and then in the same cities for, I think, 12 or 15 workshops. And it was one of the greatest things I've ever done, because we met filmmakers in all different size cities. We started to understand what was possible and what was challenging in all different size cities. It gave us a totally different sense of the kind of product we wanted to build. I've never wanted to build something that Zach Braff wants to use. I always wanted to build something that Turtle Dove wanted to use. Right? And that filmmakers in the outskirts of Durham, North Carolina wanted to use, and Chattanooga and Milwaukee and Minneapolis, because it should be an access point for people who don't have access, as opposed to another tool for people who already have all the access. Because then we're not building something that's useful broadly, we're building something that's useful narrowly. And that doesn't seem like a big speaking of sustainable business, I'd rather have the big wide audience as opposed to the really narrow one, right? So we started this Day in Detour, and we were like, well, let's see if people like this. And it went really well. We had a really good time. We taught audiences as big as 120. We taught audiences big as 4. We were like, we were brand new, we learned a lot about how different film commissions and organizations organized in different cities. We learned never to try to schedule a film-related thing when a 48-hour film festival was happening. We learned lots of things. And then by February of this year, we had 150 requests for new classes.
That's awesome.
It's totally cool. And then we brought on G Technology as a sponsor to make it possible for us, because it wasn't cheap what we did, right? At least for our tiny company. So it made it possible for us to go everywhere. It also helped us develop relationships. So when we announced, this is one of my favorite things, we announced on IndieWire that we launched the new website, and we have these new hires, and we're sort of kicking everything up a notch. I think the only comment of the article was somebody who was like, they seem to have a lot of money for marketing and people. And I wanted to laugh so hard, because we've raised literally 1/60th of the capital that, for example, Indiegogo's raised, because we're still really small. And I was so flattered that she thought we had a lot of money for PR, because it's just me. And the relationships we built by literally going to all these cities and offering something to people. And part of the reason that we did it is because when we talk to filmmakers about building relationships, about building social capital that is for their longevity, we can say, here's how we did it. We can be part of the proof. And that's been really important to me at every step, is I don't ever want to teach somebody something I don't think that I haven't done. Right? I don't want to be out there espousing something that I don't think is, that I'm like, well, theoretically you could, we have built our brand into something that apparently looks like it has a really expensive marketing budget.
It looks fantastic.
Thank you so much. On very, very little money, comically little money for a startup of our size. And, part of that has to do with the financial constraints we're under, because I'm a female founder running a content company. I'm a first-time female founder running a content company. Those are a lot of things stacked against you in the VC world, right? So that has limited us in certain ways and forced us to be creative in others. And so where we use our relationships to look spendy in the PR department, I do spend all my money on making sure we have the brain power and the manpower inside the company to like build the next phase of what we're promising. And really it's like the next 9 to 12 months are crucial for us in the next phase of what we're building. And like I haven't really decided yet if I'm ready to talk about it. So you'll forgive me if I get like cagey all of a sudden because we like just wrapped our minds around it and it's so fresh that I don't want to like promise something that all of a sudden we decide like never mind, we're not going that way.
We'll get you on the next time you come in town to talk about it. We got about 10 minutes left. I want to be very respectful of your time. So before we stop on that subject, something that really interests me is I want to know the good things you learned, and for me specifically, I want to know like I want to be validated that what scares me in crowdfunding scares other people too. So what did you learn as far as like what motivated people to do it, and then what scared the hell out of people to do crowdfunding, and what do you kind of tell those people? Because I mean, specifically, it's like
I have a 90-minute answer to this question.
I know.
The long and the short of it is, if you're going to do crowdfunding well, so that it is not just about money, but it is actually about the distribution of your film. It's like look, the point of filmmaking is not fundraising. The point of filmmaking is to get people to watch it when it's finished. So every single thing you do, including the fundraising, should be with an eye to getting people to watch it when it's finished. That takes a lot of work. And I think the problem that we have right now is still an education gap. We still want to make movies as if smartphones don't exist. Why does that matter? A smartphone allows anyone who has one, that's 90% of the cellular customers in the US, several 100 million people, allows anyone to shoot, edit, distribute, and watch a movie from their pocket. If you think the current filmmaking landscape will behave like the one even 10 years ago, you are out of your mind. And so you can continue to go to work as if what you're supposed to do is bury yourself in your content, make it behind a wall, and come back and be like, do you love it? Will you pick me? Which is what the film business has been until now. It's created a tremendous culture of scarcity among filmmakers because they think, well, if he gets picked, I don't. Or if she gets picked, I don't. What crowdfunding has opened us up to, what digital distribution has opened us up to, is the more collaboration, the better everyone does. It's Kelly Williams, who's an Austin-based producer, who got together with Obvious Child, Lucky Me, Hellion, and Ping Pong Summer, all of whom released in the same summer, and they did something called the Summer Indie Movie Challenge. If you watch all four of these films will send you a package, and if you post it on social. So these are 4 separate films who collaborated totally without talking to their distributors to drive people to see their movie. And so what I think is beautiful about this, if you're willing to accept it, is it's about working together. But it's also about doing all the work. And
so funny.
I have filmmakers who say like, but I'm just the creative. Like, I don't like the business stuff. And I'm like, then no one should ever give you $1. If you are literally willing to look me in the face and say, I'm just the creative, I'm not a business person, either introduce me to your producer who's willing to say they're the business person, or you have no right to be hiring people onto your sets, asking investors for money, and then being like, ooh, I'm just the creative, sorry you didn't make your money back. That's bad for all of us because you've just burnt some film investors and probably pissed off the people that you hired who maybe you didn't end up paying well or whatever. Like, I'm a CEO. Do you know how much of my job is just eating a shit sandwich? Like doing stuff that I don't want to do, that like learning stuff I wish I didn't have to know, but like I literally couldn't ask somebody to invest in me if I couldn't tell them all of the terms of the convertible note, which is the financial instrument that they're using to invest in. If I couldn't tell them what our return plan was and how we built our KPIs for, the next 24 months. These are things I did not know what they meant when I started, but I realized nobody should give me money if I don't know what these things mean, right? And so some of it is like, let's take some responsibility and say, all the tools are available to us right now so that we never have to wait to be picked again.
Holy shit.
So in that case, why don't you pick yourself? And if you pick yourself, that means investing a lot of time and a lot of energy into learning things that maybe don't sound that exciting to you, but in the end are about building what you want. And see, this is the bigger question. I think it sort of forces a reckoning. What do you actually want? Yeah. Because if the answer is, I just want to be famous.
Wrong reason.
I'm not saying it's a wrong reason, but like if that's a different path you have to follow. Yeah. But if the answer is, I want to make what's really close to my heart in a way that sustains my life or like would allow me to have a family or whatever, like more dogs, I don't know, or like another roommate. Yeah. Like what
one less
roommate. Like whatever it is that you want, it's available to you if you want an independent, sustainable career. It's not easy. By any means. No, and I'm saying this like 3 years into starting a company, and you guys, every week I'm like, holy shit, that's like a whole other set of problems I didn't even, and every time I'm like, I can't learn any more things. I have to learn more things. Yeah. You know? And it's not unlike being a filmmaker, right? Because every time you learn one workflow, they fucking update the technology, or they change the camera, or they update the speed. You have to learn a whole other workflow and a new editing system, and like, you know, this is just the world that we live in now. Everything's changing really rapidly. And the only way that you can future-proof your career, meaning you can adjust to any adaptation in technology, any adaptation in distribution mechanisms, is if you have a direct connection to your audience, because you will always be able to monetize that.
Man, y'all are getting some gold here.
This is straight up gold.
Like seriously, like as an independent filmmaker, it just like, there's been multiple times where you're just talking, it's like, holy shit, I can't contain myself, because it's like, this is exactly what I know and what I want to do. So real quick before we kind of finish off.
Sure.
You've been talking a lot about helping other people, or helping other people tell their story. Mm-hmm. What's your story? What do you want?
What's your legacy?
Yeah. What do you want to do? Why are you doing all this? And I know that's such a weird question and such a...
Well, it probably started because I'm kind of stubborn and don't like to be told no.
Yeah. New Yorker?
No, from California, but well, I did spend a lot of time as a kid. I think we're at a really, if you look at the history of the civil rights movement, there's a whole piece of the civil rights movement in the 60s, the late 50s and early 60s that started to happen because of the television. Because all of a sudden into people's homes were being broadcast images of injustices that people were getting to ignore until they had a television that only had like 4 channels, right?
Yeah.
Well, why do you think we're back in this incredible new phase of the civil rights movement? It's the internet.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the things that the internet empowers is people who've never been able to have a voice to be heard.
Yeah.
And the truth is, like, I care less about movies, like in terms of the medium, than I do about their ability to connect with people, to make them see themselves in a new way, right? Like movies are about, like, you know, scientists teach us about the world outside and artists teach us about the world inside. It's like a profoundly important cultural service. And the storytellers, who were always the ones to gather the community to the fireside and sort of spin up the myths that would help us organize the way we see the world. Yeah. We can do that now with the interconnectivity. We can now gather the community. And for me, going to work in this way produces more different kinds of authentic stories than we've ever seen before. And that's what excites me. Right? It's never been the movie as a medium, right? It's been that movies have a particular power. And now web series and documentaries and AR and VR and all these other things. But that it's just a new opportunity that I want to help facilitate for people. And I don't want us to spend any more time pretending like it doesn't exist or stuck in the old models that maybe are comfortable because it just means like, well, if they didn't pick me, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
You know, there's a piece of living in our potential we can no longer do. We now have to actually like live up to it.
Yeah.
It's a big ask. And like, believe me, I feel the pressure every day.
Holy shit, yeah.
Because we've set this out, you know, for Seed and Spark. And like, we have a huge uphill battle. We have our competitors are hugely well funded and international already, and we have no shortage of people who, just still don't believe we can possibly be successful, and we still have to sort of fight our battle in that face all the time. And I also know there's a ton of people who really want us to be successful, and are kind of waiting by the sidelines to see if we are. And I'm like, well, you kind of got to join the movement if you really want to make it move in that direction. So it's scary, and I definitely I feel it, and therefore I really feel for filmmakers when they take our workshop and they get overwhelmed by sort of the work that has been set out, because I'm there every day, and so I really feel it. But I also have to say, I'm not going to excuse you from doing this work, because this is what it's going to take. And then maybe you get to be one of the lucky ones that gets picked. But let's not bank a career on a lottery ticket. Yeah. Right? Let's go to work every day and then maybe still play the lottery. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Jeez. That's, Emily, you've been fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
So we got a couple things real quick that we do to kind of end it out.
Okay.
We got about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So we did this thing called lightning round, where we're going to go through and kind of shoot you some questions, and they're just get to know you questions.
Okay.
Where's yours from this time?
I don't know yet.
Okay. So we go through, we pick dumb websites that have get to know you questions that people ask on dates and stuff. And
jeez.
They're so much fun.
Okay.
Okay. Brad, you got yours?
No.
Pick one. Just pick it. Pick it. Mine right now is from signupgenius.com.
Well, I always like to go to lovepanky.com.
Lovepanky.com is probably our favorite. It's been on one of
every single episode. Lovepanky.com.
Go.
All right.
I'm
okay.
ready.
If you were a superhero, what powers would you have?
I want to be able to do all the martial arts.
All right.
And I want to heal people.
Okay. Pick one.
Okay. Would you lie to make me happy, and where would you draw the line?
No.
Okay. No. All right, there you go. How many pillows do you sleep with?
2.
What's the craziest thing you'd be willing to do for me? I'm sorry.
This is a weird thing. Anyway, Brad.
Forget me.
Love or hate roller coasters?
It depends.
What does it depend on?
I don't remember anymore. I haven't been on one in so long. I used to love them. Yeah. I fear them now.
Okay.
Just because I'm a grown-up and have a sense of my own mortality.
All right.
What kind of animal would you be and why?
Lapdog.
A lapdog?
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic.
Hang out. I'd be my dog, basically. Hang out in a yard, scratch myself, get scratched all day. He's an office dog, so there's 14 people that pet him all day long, and then he once he's bored with that, he goes and sleeps on a really comfy bed, and that's his life.
All right, one of the last questions: do you collect anything?
Clothes.
Okay, all right, there you go. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Just like you said, to make money, it's not a bad thing. Collecting clothes is not a bad thing.
Last one. If you could describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be?
Oh, that is the worst question I've ever been asked.
First 3.
That's terrible,
okay.
Brad.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll take it.
Questions, buddy.
I'll take it. No, I'm always telling filmmakers you have to know what you are. I eat crow sometimes. Passionate.
Okay.
I can see that.
one.
Energetic.
All right.
Probably stubborn.
There you go. All right, and then the last thing that we do is we do one thing that's not related to film, not related to the internet, not related to anything you're doing. What's new is what we do in the intro.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
This is I can't remember the name of it, but just do you have off topic?
Great, off topic.
I said that earlier today.
An app or a book, for instance, I found the Steal Like an Artist books by Austin Kleon.
Awesome.
He's got 2 books that are out right now that kind of give you 10 reasons why. Nothing. It says nothing is original. You take ideas that are based off what you see.
Oh yeah, I know this book.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's totally on topic, by the way.
Is it? No, it's just it's a book. It's whatever.
It's
an artist resource.
Right, okay.
A couple of guys I know just released a wonderful book that they co-wrote. It's a narrative book they co-wrote called War of the Encyclopedists. And I had never read a piece of fiction that was so contemporary to me and sort of elevated my experience to the literary in a way that I just didn't I didn't realize till halfway through that I was why am I having this experience? It's nothing in sort of contemporary life has been elevated at this level of literary experience. So I really recommend that book, War of the Encyclopedists.
War of the Encyclopedists. And we'll put that on there. And then Brad, you got one?
Yeah. You know the game Heads Up?
Yes.
It's the best game to play at parties.
Heads Up, 7-Up? Like
No.
Oh.
It's an app. It's like catchphrase.
Oh, where you put it on your head.
Yeah. I was doing that yesterday at the Halloween party at the institution, and it was just me, Ben, and Allison.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, 12 people joined.
Oh, it's like Cards Against Humanity. It just like attracts a crowd all of a sudden.
And it's wonderful because unless you are the one with the game, like it's the app on your phone. Right. Unless you're the one with the phone, you can just leave whenever you want. But if it's your phone, you have to be there the whole time, even if you're bored.
Perfect party game, though.
That's fantastic.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
All right. So before we close out, again, Emily, people can find you at seedandspark.com. brightideasmag.com, and then your Twitter handle is at @EmilyBest, and then at Seed and Spark.
Yep.
Look at that.
Super easy.
But before, I just want to say thank you. I was so speechless in this episode because I'm just sitting here like, this is gold.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let this happen.
Guys.
No, you were wonderful.
Wonderful interview. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You. Yeah.
All right, and
bing, 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 bing.